The desperate signal. The crystal spires of Valdari Prime had stood for 3,000 years, their surfaces catching starlight and transforming it into waves of peaceful energy that nourished the planet below. Today, those same spires flickered and dimmed as something unseen drained their power. Ambassador Zara Velders pressed her translucent palm against the observation deck's window, watching her world die. The Valdari were beings of living crystal, their bodies naturally conducting and storing energy from their sun. For generations, they had been the galaxy's peacekeepers, their ability to sense life force making them perfect mediators in conflicts between organic species. But nothing had prepared them for this. "The southern continent has gone dark," reported Counselor Marin, his crystalline form flickering with unstable energy patterns. "Whatever these creatures are, they're consuming everything. Not just our technology, not just our cities. They're draining the life force from the planet itself." Zara turned from the window, her blue-tinted crystal skin reflecting the emergency lights that pulsed throughout the council chamber. Through her telepathic senses, she could feel the terror of her people as invisible predators moved through their cities like ghosts, leaving behind empty husks where once vibrant Valdari had stood. "Show me the reconnaissance data again," she commanded. A holographic display materialized in the center of the room, showing grainy images of the attackers. They appeared as shifting shadows, roughly humanoid but composed of what looked like living darkness. Wherever they moved, lights dimmed, plants withered, and any Valdari caught in their path simply stopped. Their crystal bodies would remain intact, but the inner light that defined their species would be gone forever. "We're calling them void feeders," Marin explained, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "They appeared 3 days ago, emerging from what seemed like tears in space itself. Our energy weapons pass right through them. Our shields can't detect them. They exist in some state between matter and energy, and they're spreading across every continent." Zara absorbed this information, her mind racing through possible solutions. The Valdari had faced many challenges in their long history, but they had always relied on their technological superiority and their ability to understand other life forms. These void feeders seemed to exist outside all conventional understanding of life itself. "What about the Galactic Council?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "The Threni refuse to risk their ships against an unknown threat. The Korthak claim it's not their problem since we're outside their territorial boundaries. The Mechanists." Marin's form flickered with disgust. "The Mechanists say that since the attackers seem to target organic life force, they see no reason to intervene." Zara felt a familiar frustration. For all their talk of galactic unity, most species were ultimately concerned only with their own survival. The Valdari had spent centuries mediating their conflicts, helping them resolve territorial disputes and trade disagreements, but when her people faced extinction, those same species were nowhere to be found. "There is one option," Marin said quietly. "The forbidden transmission." Every Valdari in the chamber fell silent. The forbidden transmission was a desperate protocol, created during the darkest days of the last Galactic War. It involved sending distress signals not just to known civilizations, but to the empty spaces between stars, to the regions marked as uninhabitable or unexplored on every star chart. "You're talking about contacting the outer rim," Zara said slowly. "The dead zones." "And beyond," Marin confirmed, "including Sector 7 Alpha." A collective shiver ran through the assembled Valdari. Sector 7 Alpha was the designation for a small cluster of star systems that had been declared off-limits by every major galactic power. Strange signals had been detected from that region for decades, but no ship that had gone to investigate had ever returned. Most species had simply agreed to pretend it didn't exist. "There are rumors," whispered Counselor Tylus, her voice barely audible. "Stories pass between traders and explorers. They say something lives out there. Something that watches the galaxy but never interferes. Something that fought the great darkness before the current galactic age even began." Zara knew the stories. Legends spoke of a species that had mastered both technology and warfare on a scale that terrified other civilizations. They were said to be aggressive, unpredictable, and dangerous, but also capable of great loyalty to those they considered worthy. The galaxy's major powers had apparently made contact with them centuries ago and had collectively decided that it was better to leave them alone. If the legends are true, Zora said slowly, if there really is something out there, would they even care about our plight? According to the old stories, Marin replied, they have a strange code of honor. They respond to calls for help from those who cannot help themselves, but they also judge whether the caller is worthy of their aid. Through the chamber's windows, another crystal spire went dark. Zora could feel the death of thousands of her people as their life force was consumed by the invisible predators. Time was running out. Prepare the forbidden transmission, she ordered. Send it on all frequencies, to all sectors, including the dead zones. If there's even a chance that someone out there will answer. The transmission began within the hour. It was unlike anything the Valdari had ever broadcast before. Instead of the usual diplomatic language and formal protocols, Zara spoke from her heart, allowing her desperation and love for her people to flow through her telepathic abilities and into the signal itself. To anyone who can hear this message, she began, my name is Zora Valdris, speaking for the Valdari people of the Inner Spiral. We are dying. Our world is being consumed by creatures we cannot fight, cannot understand, cannot escape. They drain the life force from everything they touch, leaving behind empty shells where once there was vibrant life. She paused, feeling the weight of her entire species' survival resting on her words. We have been peaceful mediators for 3,000 years. We have never conquered, never enslaved, never made war upon other species. We have only tried to bring understanding and harmony to a galaxy filled with conflict. But now, in our darkest hour, those same species turn away from us. The transmission continued for 20 minutes, Zora pouring her soul into every word, describing the beauty of Valdari Prime before the attack, the terror of watching her people fade one by one, and the desperate hope that somewhere in the vast darkness of space, someone was listening who might care. When it ended, silence fell over the council chamber. They had done everything they could. Now they could only wait and hope that someone somewhere would answer. Light years away, in a region of space that appeared empty on every galactic map, something stirred. Deep within an asteroid field that had been carefully cultivated to look uninhabitable, monitoring stations that had remained silent for decades suddenly came alive. Sentinel-7 was one of humanity's most sophisticated deep space listening posts, hidden within a hollowed-out asteroid and powered by advanced fusion reactors that produced no detectable emissions. For 50 years, it had monitored galactic communications, gathering intelligence on the various alien civilizations that called this galaxy home. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison had been stationed here for 2 years, and in all that time, he had never heard anything like the transmission that was now flooding his communication arrays. The desperation in the alien voice was unmistakable, even translated through the universal communication protocols. Sarah, you need to hear this, he called to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Sarah Kim. Kim floated over in the low-gravity environment, her expression curious. What is it? Another trade dispute between the Threni and the Korthak? No, Morrison replied grimly. This is a genuine distress call, and it's being broadcast on emergency frequencies to every sector in the galaxy, including the ones that supposedly don't exist. He played back portions of the transmission, watching Kim's expression grow more serious with each word. The Valdari were describing an enemy unlike anything in the known galaxy, something that fed on life force itself. My God, Kim whispered, they're being wiped out. Morrison nodded. And according to this, every major galactic power has refused to help them. They're completely on their own. Except they're not, Kim said quietly. They sent this to our sector too. The two officers looked at each other, understanding the implications. Humanity had been quietly watching the galaxy for decades, learning about the various species and their politics while remaining hidden. The decision to remain isolated had been made by the Global Defense Council after first contact protocols had revealed the complex and often hostile nature of galactic politics. But this was different. This wasn't about politics or territory or trade disputes. This was about the survival of an entire species. "We need to contact Admiral Chen," Morrison said. The transmission reached Earth's High Command within hours, and Admiral Sarah Chen found herself standing before the Global Defense Council in an emergency session. At 65, Chen had spent her entire career preparing for the day when humanity might need to reveal itself to the galaxy. She had never imagined it would be like this. "The Valdari are dying," she reported to the assembled leaders. "Based on our analysis of their transmission, they have maybe days before their entire species is extinct. These void feeders appear to be something beyond conventional understanding of physics and biology." President Maria Santos leaned forward in her chair. "What's your assessment, Admiral? Can we help them?" Chen activated a holographic display showing the Valdari system. "Our xenobiology teams have been analyzing the data. These creatures seem to exist in a state between energy and matter, which explains why conventional weapons are useless against them. But there might be something about human physiology that could make a difference." "Explain," said General Rodriguez, head of the Defense Council's Strategic Planning Committee. "Humans have always been something of an anomaly," Chen continued. "Most alien species evolved on worlds with stable conditions, leading to very ordered, predictable life force patterns. But Earth was chaotic. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, massive climate shifts. We evolved to survive constant change, which gave us something no other species in the galaxy seems to have." She paused, making sure she had everyone's attention. "Unpredictable life force signatures. Our bioenergy patterns are chaotic, adaptive, and incredibly resilient. It's possible that this very chaos might be toxic to creatures that feed on orderly life force patterns." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. "You're saying we might be naturally immune to these things?" President Santos asked. "More than immune," Chen replied. "We might be poisonous to them, but there's only one way to find out. The human solution." The decision was made within hours. For the first time in human history, Earth would reveal itself to the galaxy, not as conquerors or diplomats, but as saviors responding to a desperate plea for help. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the HSV Prometheus, flagship of humanity's first contact fleet. Around her, the most advanced ships humanity had ever built prepared for their maiden voyage into open space. For 50 years, human engineers had been developing technology based on observed alien capabilities, always planning for the day when they might need to defend Earth or venture into the galaxy. "All ships report ready for hyperspace jump," announced Captain Marcus Rivera, Chen's tactical coordinator. "Destination: Valdari Prime. Estimated travel time: 14 hours. Chen nodded, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. "Signal the fleet. Today, we announce humanity's presence to the galaxy. Let's make sure our first impression is one they'll never forget." The jump to hyperspace was flawless, human navigation systems easily plotting a course through the dimensional barriers that separated star systems. As they traveled, Chen reviewed the mission parameters one final time. The fleet consisted of 12 ships, 6 heavy cruisers designed for maximum firepower, 4 science vessels equipped with the most advanced sensors and research equipment humanity possessed, and 2 specialized vessels that carried experimental weapons based on bioresonance technology. Dr. Elena Vasquez, head of the xenobiology team, had spent the entire journey analyzing the Valdari transmission data. Her preliminary conclusions were both encouraging and terrifying. "The void feeders appear to exist in a quantum state," she explained to the senior staff. "They're partially phased out of normal spacetime, which is why conventional matter-based weapons pass right through them. But they need to partially phase back into our reality to feed on life force. Which means there's a moment when they're vulnerable, Rivera concluded. Exactly. And based on our analysis of Valdari physiology, their life force operates on very specific frequencies. Ordered, harmonious, predictable. The void feeders have adapted to consume exactly that type of energy. Chen studied the data, but human life force. Chaotic, unpredictable, constantly shifting frequencies. It's possible that when the void feeders try to feed on human life force, they'll be overwhelmed by the complexity, like trying to digest poison. And if you're wrong, Vasquez met her gaze steadily. Then we'll die just as quickly as the Valdari, but at least we'll have tried. They dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Valdari system, and the sight that greeted them was worse than anything they had imagined. The beautiful crystal world described in the transmission was now a patchwork of light and darkness. Entire continents had gone completely black, while others flickered with dying energy. "My God," whispered Rivera. "How many are already gone?" "Scanning for life signs," reported Lieutenant Kim from the sensor station. "I'm reading maybe 30% of the original population still alive, but the numbers are dropping rapidly." Chen opened a communication channel to the Valdari Council. "Valdari Prime, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. We received your transmission and have come to offer assistance." The response came immediately, filled with desperate hope and confusion. "Human Defense Fleet, we have no records of your species, but please, if you can help us. We're transmitting our coordinates. We need to study these void feeders firsthand before we can develop an effective strategy." What followed was humanity's first formal contact with an alien species, conducted under the most desperate circumstances imaginable. Ambassador Zara Valters, despite the crisis facing her people, insisted on proper first contact protocols, though they were abbreviated due to the urgency of the situation. "Your species has been watching us," she stated during their first face-to-face meeting, conducted via holographic projection. "For how long?" Chen decided on honesty. "About 50 years. We wanted to understand the galaxy before revealing ourselves. We never expected our first contact to be under these circumstances." "But you came," Zora replied simply. "When everyone else turned away, you came." The human science teams worked around the clock, studying the void feeders with sensors far more advanced than anything the Valdari possessed. What they discovered confirmed Dr. Vasquez's theories, but also revealed something far more disturbing. "These aren't just random predators," Vasquez reported. "They're organized, intelligent, and according to the quantum resonance patterns we're detecting, they're all connected to a central intelligence." "A hive mind?" Chen asked. "More sophisticated than that. Think of it as a network of distributed consciousness. Each individual void feeder is both autonomous and part of a larger entity, and that larger entity is ancient. We're talking about something that's been dormant for millennia and has only recently awakened." The implications were staggering. This wasn't just an attack on the Valdari. It was the beginning of something much larger, a galaxy-wide threat that most species couldn't even comprehend, much less fight. "We need to test the bioresonance weapons," Chen decided. "If human life force really is toxic to these things, we need to know before it's too late to save anyone." The first test was conducted on a volunteer basis. Captain Rivera led a small team to one of the infected continents, where void feeders had been detected but hadn't yet consumed all available life force. The plan was simple: expose human crew members to the creatures and monitor the results. What happened exceeded their wildest hopes. As soon as the void feeders attempted to drain life force from the human volunteers, the creatures recoiled as if burned. The chaotic, unpredictable nature of human bioenergy patterns was indeed toxic to them, causing their quantum coherence to destabilize. "It works," Rivera reported excitedly. "They can't feed on us. But more than that, our presence seems to disrupt their ability to feed on anything else. The Valdari in this area are starting to recover." Dr. Vasquez had been monitoring the entire encounter from orbit. The bioresonance weapons should amplify this effect exponentially, if we can get them close enough to the main concentrations of void feeders. The final battle took place over Valdori Prime's largest continent, where nearly 1 million void feeders had gathered around the planet's primary energy nexus. The human fleet moved into position, their bioresonance weapons charged and ready. All ships. "This is Admiral Chen," the Admiral announced. "Today we're not just fighting for the Valdori. We're fighting for the principle that no species should face extinction alone. All weapons, full power." The bioresonance weapons were unlike anything that had ever been used in galactic warfare. Instead of projecting destructive energy, they amplified and broadcast the chaotic life force patterns of their human operators. The effect on the void feeders was immediate and devastating. Across the continent, the shadow creatures began to writhe and shriek, their quantum coherence breaking down under the assault of human bioenergy. Those that didn't simply dissolve began fleeing back toward the dimensional tiers from which they had emerged. But as the last of the creatures retreated, something else emerged from the largest tear in spacetime. A being of immense size and power, its consciousness so ancient and vast that it hurt to look at directly. The Void Mother, Dr. Vasquez breathed, reading the quantum signatures, the central intelligence controlling all the others. The entity spoke, its voice resonating through dimensions and translating automatically through their communication systems. "Impossible," it said, the word carrying the weight of eons. "Life force that burns instead of nourishes. Chaos that cannot be consumed. What manner of species are you?" Chen stepped forward, her image broadcast across all frequencies. "We are humanity, and we're here to tell you that your feeding time is over." "Humanity," the Void Mother repeated, tasting the word. "I have slept for 10,000 years, feeding only when the galaxy forgets the dangers of the deep dark. But you are something new, something that should not exist. And yet we do," Chen replied. "The question is, will you retreat peacefully, or do we need to show you just how dangerous we can be?" For a moment that stretched across eternity, the two beings regarded each other. Ancient hunger versus newfound determination. Order versus chaos. Death versus life. Finally, the Void Mother spoke again. "This galaxy is under my protection now, young Chaos Bringers. I will remember you." With that, the entity withdrew, pulling the remaining dimensional tiers closed behind it. The void feeders were gone, but Chen knew this was only the first encounter. Something had awakened in the deep dark, something that would remember humanity and might return. In the aftermath, as Valdori Prime slowly began to recover its lost energy, Ambassador Zura approached Admiral Chen with a proposal that would change the galaxy forever. "My people wish to offer humanity full membership in the Galactic Council," she said. "More than that, we wish to form a defensive alliance. What we faced today was beyond any single species' ability to handle alone." Chen nodded slowly. "We accept. But there's something you need to understand about humans, Ambassador. We don't just make alliances. We make family. And family protects family, no matter what." As the human fleet prepared for the journey home, carrying with them the first alien ambassadors ever to visit Earth, Chen stood on her bridge looking back at the recovering crystal world. They had answered a desperate call and saved an entire species. But more than that, they had announced humanity's presence to the galaxy in a way that would never be forgotten. The age of human isolation was over. The age of galactic cooperation was just beginning. And somewhere in the deep dark between the stars, ancient things that had slept for millennia were starting to wake up, drawn by the chaos that was humanity's gift to the universe.